Welcome to your Veterans Resource Podcast, Return to Roots. This podcast is for service members and their family members regarding retention, transition, and reintegration from active duty to veterans in the community. Hi, I'm your host, Chris Elder, an active duty senior chief in the United States Navy, and my partner in crime / host is Yogi Hernandez, who's an active duty chief in the Navy. Together, we are documenting our experiences as we prepare to transition and reintegrate into the community. Every podcast will have actionable content that will benefit American service members and their families, as well as those who have already transitioned and reintegrated. The first 3 episodes of Return to Roots is going to be with Maurice D. Wilson. Maurice served as a master chief in the United States Navy. He retired and then transitioned and reintegrated as the president and national executive director of the National Veterans Transition Services, also known as Reboot. He's a mentor of Return to Roots, and we are very privileged to have him here with us today. Thank you, Maurice, for coming on to Return to Roots and making this thing possible.
That, if you will. So again, Operation SKILLBRIDGE, we started it many years ago when the Army started the SKILLBRIDGE program. And it was just a fledgling program when they first started. And we looked at that and said, hey, that's nice if you're in the military, if you're still on active service. But if you're already a veteran, then SKILLBRIDGE doesn't mean anything to you because it doesn't exist. So we looked at that and said, well, we need a civilian equivalency to SKILLBRIDGE. So we came up with Operation SKILLBRIDGE, but we took it a whole another level. And the level that we took it to was we looked at it and said, okay, so what is the process of onboarding service members in the military? And, that's like a process. Step one, you go down to the MIP station and you take the ASVAB, get categorized. And then the decision is made what your career is going to be. Step two, you go to boot camp. Step three, you go to your AC school. And step four, you serve in your command. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty straightforward. And think about that for a moment. Just kind of just to take a step back and think about that as a process that's been in play for a long time. And that's how we do it. That's how the military does it. Step one is kind of like that, the vetting, the qualification, and then that referral in. But then boot camp, your school, and then your command, 1, 2, 3, 4. So when we looked at that, we said, why don't we reverse engineer the process? Think about that for a second. So whatever is successful. So again, one of the things that we looked at was re-engineer or reverse engineering what works. And so let's, and I just want to ask you guys a question. What are your thoughts on the military's onboarding process in terms of your perception of how it works? Because my perception is the damn thing works, and it works really well. Okay,
agreed.
Uncle Sam has got this thing wired, and every year they're able to process seamlessly 200,000 people coming in. But no one has really been able to capture that coming out.
You're right. Like, I'm not sure if you've ever seen one of the videos of the bus pulling into the Marine Corps boot camp.
Yeah.
Then you got that gunny or the staff sergeant or the sergeant that comes in there and just rips them all a new butt, and they're all running out there. And the boot camp, you go through boot camp, and then after boot camp, for the Marine Corps, they need a little bit longer, 13 weeks, but that's how they get unwavering loyalty out of them. Um,
Mhm.
and then they go from that, they go to their A school, C school, or a combat school if they're Marines or Army. They're going to be going through that, right? And then
Mhm.
after that, they go through they may go through an additional training, and then they
Mhm.
end up into the fleet where they get more training from the command. And that is, it's amazing how when you step back, you just take a look at it and you go, oh, you got average Joe turning from uh, not being able to follow simple directions and chores back at home to launching a aircraft off of a aircraft carrier in the middle of the Pacific, 26, 30, 40 weeks later. That's just
Operate
insane.
and operating multi-million dollar equipment too. From zero to that. I mean, that is amazing. And so you got to take a step back and ask yourself a question. So, what goes into the soup, that they're cooking, that gumbo that produces that result? And so we studied that and looked at that and said, okay, what we need to do is create our version of a reverse boot camp, which is reverse engineering how the military does it coming in. And so our solution or our response is what we call Operation Skill Bridge. And in Operation Skill Bridge, we like, and again, the reason we chose the term operation is because it's a multi-agency, multi-pronged approach. It's not one only organization, it's multiple organizations all working together. And when you look at how the military does it, internally, there are multiple units that are all working in tandem to fulfill the objective.
I
So,
was, I was just kind of sneak peeking at this a little bit. Um,
mhm,
and I'm seeing places like the UPS, Wells Fargo, San Diego's Convention Center, Qualcomm, Macy's,
mhm,
Northrop Grumman, the Kohler Company, Jack in the
mhm,
Box, all
mhm,
these different organizations, Fab 8 Labs, First
mhm,
Command,
mhm.
just Boeing, and there's so many of these. You can't even like list them all, like I'd be here forever. So when you say there's a lot of organizations, that's just the employers that are
Mhm.
involved, the organizations that are involved in this. So
Mhm.
sorry, I digress a little bit.
No, no, but it was a good digression because it was relevant to the topic that we were covering here. And in fact, let me just kind of I always like to do my little show and tell. So I'm going to give you sort of like my version here, where you could kind of see it also. I kind of like squished it down into like bite-sized nuggets, if you will. So again, so at the end of the day, so here's what we learned after all this time. We learned that it's the process. It's not a singular program. It's the process and how you interlink them all together and how you prepare one to feed into the next, to feed into the next, to feed into the next. Very seamless process. So what it doesn't do is force the individual, i.e. the veteran or transition service member, to go seek things out themselves. It's a process that says, okay, automatically after you finish this, you're going to be sent over there. And when you finish with this, you're going to be sent over there. And when you finish with this, you're going to be sent over there. And you're going to be tracked all the way through the process, just like in the military. So this is our solution that we're now really pushing. This is how they say this is the middle game. And there's that first step, which is okay, so, but how do we get them to the table? And this is where ETS comes in. And again, the timing for that process, because it's not a program, it's a process. And that's a multi-organizational process. So it's not just one entity making ETS work. There's multiple organizations that are making that thing work. And so we were fortunate to connect with them and be in the right place that makes us a perfect fit for what they're doing. But in terms of how you link that on to what we're doing in Operation SkillBridge is perfect. So kind of look at this, what you see here on the slide, and just look at if there's a step one, before step one, there's the ETS feed, if you will. And so that's where people come from. And so now we have this process that says, okay, well, we're going to make it as easy as 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's really what we're doing right now. And so we've already tested out the reboot workshop. It works. Okay, we got evidence and data on that. We've also built up this partnership network of training providers. And I think, Chris, I think you're on the website. And so you can see all the different industries that we have represented there. And I didn't say this, I didn't say it enough, but we're also a Coursera partner. So with Coursera, that means that once the person begins to identify what they're looking for, they can take up to 5,000 online, I know that's an overwhelming number, but they can take free online courses to help them get any kind of certificate or reskilling that they want. That's automatically available to them, no cost. And while they're going through the process, we're tracking them every step of the way. But now, and with the ETS sponsor is the person that's actually doing the live one-on-one tracking of the individual. And so tomorrow we're going to be meeting with some of our newly certified ETS sponsors to, again, introduce them to the process. And then once they've become comfortable with it, we're going to start connecting them with transitioning service members that they can sit down with them and find out, hey, what are your dreams, your aspirations? What do you want to do? Okay, and then explain to them, here's the first step. We can schedule you for a seminar or a workshop to help you kind of get your head together, because as it stands right now, a lot of people aren't necessarily ready. And so once they're in that process, then we use all the tools that we have to help determine where that person wants to fit for the next career. And then the process begins in terms of reskilling. And then once they finish with it, the employer list, what you're looking at right there is a very short list. I just pulled up the database early this morning of the number of employers that we have just in our database. It's over 2,100 in the database already. And ultimately, that list will grow over the next few years, especially if you look at just San Diego, which San Diego has roughly 85,000 employers. So it's really, really big. And so again, but we need this whole village concept, and we need the team to help interact with each individual, monitor the individuals, talk to the individual. The thing that we want, and this is why, again, we really like the ETS sponsorship program, is that with ETS, we can now make this very personal. So that means the person is getting out, they can be matched up with their ETS sponsor, and the ETS sponsor will help them get through the whole Operation SkillBridge 4-step process. They'll help them get signed up for the reboot workshop. They'll be there with them to help them get signed up for reskilling. They'll be there to connect them to our partners on the placement side of the house. And we have several partners that are really working in that area. And then ultimately, we'll connect them to, let's say, a community organization, like maybe American Legion, VFW, IAVA. The list just goes on and on and on. And so I just wanted to kind of explain that to you, and maybe take a pause and see what kind of thoughts that has provoked for you and what questions you may have.
So looking at the Coursera option, that's pretty cool, because I never really heard of Coursera before, and just kind of looking at it right now, you could go on there, you could be like, oh, well, I want to be a project manager. We have a lot of experience as project managers, but certificates is kind of the civilian way of demonstrating that. So if you're like, hey, I'm not getting out anytime soon, but I'm a maintenance controller in a squadron and I already do this, but hey, I want to get a certificate. You can knock this out, or you could even do it. You don't have to be a maintenance controller, but you could just knock out this certificate and bam, you have a certification showing that, hey, you are going to be able to uh, project manage, or at least you have a certificate that says you can. And that's like an amazing resource. And you kind of I've seen some things like this similar to what LinkedIn has, but LinkedIn is only a year long. Yeah, you have access to that stuff. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. What do you think, Yogi?
So I absolutely love Coursera. I've used Coursera before, and it is an amazing tool to have. Uh, I'm glad that it's accessible to everybody, especially during the transition process when you are very concerned financially because you don't know what your next step is going to be. Therefore, being basically free, right, to the service member, it is a huge option because you're watching basically every penny to try to make sure that you're making the right decisions and things that we always do, right? Our education and our healthcare, 90% of the time, we don't prioritize that. We usually leave it to the wayside. Oh, I'll get to it tomorrow. I'll get to it the next day. And this way, you no longer have that excuse. And then adding the traction of now you're being tracked by your peers and your ETS sponsor. That's also another motivator that you're like, oh, okay, well, now I have to do it. I signed up for this and now I have to do it. It's not just that, oh, sounded really cool at the time and, now I'm not going to do it. Also partnering up with all the employers, it is fascinating because you're essentially becoming a one-stop shop for everything. It's the come here, get focused, figure out what you want, get detached from the mentality of just following orders to now you're becoming a civilian again, to now trying to really figure out what you want to do, which we covered during our first podcast with you, Maurice, that it's the everybody's plan, right? Is like, I'll just get out and go to college. Cool. What are you going to do? I'll figure out when I get there,
Yep.
Whereas with this, you're actually setting up specific plans, specific goals, specific deadlines across and actually being tracked and pushing yourself through every single one of them, not just leaving it very ambiguous. Because also with you not having a specific goal, yes, you go to school for 3 years, but that doesn't mean, or 4 years, but that doesn't mean you're gonna graduate. You'll just get it, you'll finish, and you'll be like, oh, I didn't get anything, and then you moved on to something else. So this is fantastic. I absolutely love it, and the partnering up with so many of the entities for work is fascinating because you're not just restricting to one industry, focusing, let's say, on the financial industry or focusing on the data center industry or the housing or whatever else. You're legitimately opening up the market to everything: marketing, real estate, aviation, government jobs, financial. It is amazing. This kind of stuff is very well, one, it's unheard of, but it's amazing to have everything in one stop shop to be able to go forward, and plus all the growth that you already have coming to add to this. So this blows my mind. I'm fascinated by this.
Well,
So
and the other part is that you don't have to spend your GI Bill because most people don't really know what they want to do, and then the first thing they do is, well, I'm gonna go to school and use my GI Bill, which is no, you don't want to do that. Save that money for the time when you really know what you want to do, and then you can go use it. And so this provides an alternative solution that says, look, it's free. We found ways to get others to pay for it, and you don't have to tap into your GI Bill. You need to get out, kind of get your feet, kind of get your sea legs, if you will, figure some things out. And then once you have your bearing and you're certain about what then, if you want to go to school and get the degree, you can do that. But no, this, oh, Yogi, you're right. This helps people get certificates, which for the most part, the vast majority of employers only require a certificate for you to come work for them. They don't require a degree. I'm like, why go through all of that effort and, you know, spend all that time getting a degree that you probably may not even use? Just get your certificate and then get the job and then just get on with your life. Chris?
So I'm looking at this and it's like further I dig into Coursera, the more excited I get about this little feature. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna kind of just dig a little bit deeper. You know, I was just looking at like if you want to take a financial class, Yale offers a financial class on here, and if you're telling me Coursera is free, that means you could take a free Yale course that's 38 hours and get certified. You know, there's a class that's 2 hours that helps you predict real estate prices. It's a class all about that. You want to be a digital creator, a podcaster? Well, there's a class on that. There's plenty of classes. There's all these different classes in there. And really think about it like this. It's like, hey, I think I want to do this. Well, take a free course. See if it like makes you excited. Do you get excited doing it? You know, and it's kind of like a free preview into what you're going to be doing in your career. So that's pretty amazing to me.
Oh yeah. In fact, I'm bringing up the I don't show this to everybody, but this is you know, one of the catalogs that we've had kind of curated. So you can see we call it the domain, or really the domain is kind of like the industry, and then they got the subdomain, which is the industry. So right now we have available total courses about 5,000 courses that's available from business, and you can see the subdomains there. Computer science, you can see the subdomains there. Life sciences, you can see that. Data science, physical science and engineering, social sciences, humanities, information, IT, you know, things like. So again, what we try to do is just make it easy so that people have a game plan. So what is the one thing that most transitioning service members are missing? A game plan, period. And so what we've done is pulled everything together. And so this is not one program. This is multiple programs and organizations all coming together, interlinked. It's sort of like an orchestra, you know, very coordinated. That's why we call it Operation SkillBridge, is an orchestrated process of all these entities and things all put together. And all the transitioning service member has to do is sign up and show up. That's it. Everything else is for active duty. You know, this is for active duty and veterans and guard and reserve and spouses. And so basically show up and just participate. That's it.
Again, Maurice, ready?
Yeah.
Ready for the trick question?
Yes.
But wait, how much does it cost?
Hey. Zero, nada.
Well, your time, dedication, and skill.
Yeah. Well, you know, everything costs you something. And so what I tell people is going to cost you a little bit of time, but what else do you have? What time?
Exactly.
Now, I always like to explain to people, hey, you know, nonprofit organizations, good nonprofit organizations, they do get paid. They're paid through the government. They're paid through grants. They're paid through all that stuff. So everybody's like, well, how's this being funded? Well, it's our tax dollars. Our tax dollars are already paying for this stuff. So why wouldn't you take advantage of something that's already out there? And that, you know, you got Reboot, and you got Operation SkillBridge. You got all these different entities out here that are just taking care of you. ETS, man, there's so many of them out there, and that's just the ones that Maurice here hangs out with and has been putting together. you know. So there's so many resources out there. So, but you should always think, I always tell people, hey, know what the cost is going to be. This one's your time. This one's going to take your time.
Well, and thanks you for bringing that up, Chris, because you're absolutely right. If you really start, let's say if we broke everything down and we start looking at every organization that's part of this plan, this operation, and start calculating how much where they're getting money from and all that. They're getting money from philanthropy. They're getting money from the government. They're getting money from the state, it's coming from all kinds of places. You really couldn't even at this junction put a price tag on this, if you will. Let's just take one individual that goes through the system and gets touched by multiple organizations as they're going through the system. Okay, that's priceless. That's like so much going on. But actually, the same thing kind of sort of happens coming in. It's just that the one source really is the government, which is really our big tax dollars. And so, how much does it cost to run let's say a Marine through boot camp? That's a pretty penny. And then the training for that person, that's another that gets to be expensive over time. And by the way, remember, we're paying that person's salary all the time they're going through all of this. And so it gets to be like real expensive to make that person. And if you look at what it takes to make, let's just say a E5 EOD specialist, somewhere around about $5 million.
Yes.
It's huge. And so you got to have all those different kind of investments. So what we've been able to do, and I was on a call earlier today with the county of San Diego, and we were talking about cost. And that question came up, well, who pays for this? I said, everybody does. Okay, we're doing it already. The money is already being spent. What we're doing is we're directing it, focusing it, making sure that it really has a bigger bang for the buck, as opposed to spending an inordinate amount of money for one task that doesn't really lend itself to the outcomes that we look for. And remember, the outcomes that we look for, and how I tell people, wait for it, because there's always got to be, what is the objective? The objective is what we call a successful reintegration of the individual. Notice I didn't say job. I didn't use the word job. The end game is a successful reintegration of the individual, because it requires multiple things. Reintegration is not just, again, going back to the life balance wheel, it's not just a job. You got to look at the whole spectrum, all of the life domains. And so this covers all of the domains versus most entities that just focuses on resumes or job placement. That's just one domain. But the return on investment really isn't that great when you look down the road and you find that first year turnover is 40%, second year is 80%. So the return on investment really isn't that good. Where taking this approach, we're able to ensure retention stays high first year, somewhere around about 90% retention. Because we found the sweet spot. We found where the person wants to be. We've taken the time for them to really decide that this is what they're looking at. But we've also solved other life's problems along the way as well, where they're leaving one environment or one ecosystem and then joining another ecosystem.
It's funny, how much money does California or even Washington State spend on the average homeless person? $100,000 per homeless person is the last numbers I've heard, consecutively over a few years, and that's a lot of money on the homeless epidemic. And what has that gotten us, right? But see, what this is a solid program that's actually going to help people transition. We're already spending, I don't even know what the average number is per veteran, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty astronomical. But none of us ever see it because none of us even know about it. And we have your program that's like bringing this good news out there, like, hey, there's a transition and a reintegration process. We have all these tools and metrics out there, and a lot of people just didn't know that this thing existed. Now it's coming online. Reboot's been online for a long time. A lot of people have gone through it, and now all these additional resources are coming online to support that, which is amazing. That is purely just so freaking awesome, because now we don't have to worry about like, hey, like, what is the, we're not waiting on the government to take care of us. This is the community. That's what you are. You're part of the community. You are taking care of the sailors,
Yourself.
the Marines, the art, the soldiers, everybody that's getting out. The community is now like embracing them exactly how it should be. It's a tribe,
And that's what Admiral Mike Mullins said back in 2015 when he was the chair of the Joint Chiefs. He said, look, if anybody's going to be able to do this, it has to be the public private, the community has to be the one. The government can't do it. The government is very limited and restricted in terms of what it's obligated for, and it's really obligated to provide us with our benefits. But the government, the VA, and the Department of Labor have a finite role. Once they're finished with that role, it's over. And then now you're on your own, versus the ones that's going to take care of you on a long-term basis really is the community that you're joining. And so it just makes sense that the community that you join, that again, you should work with them and they should help reintegrate you successfully back into that culture, back into that ecosystem. It was kind of interesting. I had another conversation a couple of days ago with Yogi and the guys over there at what's that name of that organization, Yogi?
Overwatch.
Oh, the Overwatch. And we talked about TAP, and so we had to really sort of get TAP out of the way, because sometimes when people talk about it, they have this misunderstanding that, well, TAP is supposed to do all these wonderful things, which all of the research that I've read, TAP is only designed to do one thing, and it's been doing that. People complain about it, but TAP has been doing what it's supposed to do, which is give you information. That's it. Period.
It's it's a checkbox.
Yeah.
Checkbox.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I try to be a little kinder, that, okay, they do try. Let's give them a little credit. They try to give our soldiers, let's say our sailors, the required information. The challenge is, okay, it's a lot of information that they're giving, where the person just can't absorb everything at that one particular time. And so, again, TAP is not the only thing that we need. There's that next piece, and I tell folks, always go back to, what does boot camp do? When you look at the military onboarding process, the military doesn't bombard you with information when they're creating us. Okay.
Exactly.
They're taking us through the program. I mean, it's redundancy. You're learning how to do this over and over again until you do it in your sleep. You do it blind. It's like the objective for the military when we onboard somebody is very clear: to change your behavior and teach you a new skill. Very straightforward. And for that, we take a lot of care and feeding and time and patience and energy, the whole nine yards, to produce what we want to produce in the military. And so you always have to go back and look at, well, how does the military do it? Okay, coming in, can you imagine? So the new boot camp is, we want to put you in 3 days and we're going to give you a whole bunch of information. That would not go over at all. You gotta have at minimum 8 weeks of behavior modification. And like you said, Chris, and if you're a Marine, you're gonna get 13.
I do want to have, I do think I need to clarify this. The top classes that I have been through, the Smoky Point out of Washington,
Mhm.
and the San Diego one. The people who give the TAPS class have a lot of vested interest in it.
Mhm.
They actually care about you.
Mhm.
It's not a matter of the people presenting it. It's not the people that are presenting it is the problem. It's the thing is it's they're driving this proverbial fire truck worth of stuff, and it's 3 full days. It's not like half days. It's 3 full days of information, and they bring in the Department of Labor, they bring in the Veterans Affairs, they bring in they bring in not the VA, but they bring in a third party that comes and talks about the VA, but they get you enrolled into your VA stuff and all that. And it was not a bad class. They were very informational. I I asked some questions that they didn't really talk about. They didn't talk about chapter 32 during the VA brief, which is something that I don't know why the VA doesn't talk about it. It's probably because they don't want us to use it. Um, but that's a pretty big that's a big resource that a lot of people don't know. It's like you don't have to rely on just your GI Bill. You could also use Voc Rehab. It used to be called Voc Rehab to help you through college and stuff like that. But again, back to what I was trying to say. The people given the TAPS class is not the problem. The problem is TAPS class is not going to help you transition. If you're relying just on TAPS class, you're behind the curve.
Well, and that's a very accurate statement. And I try to also be kind to our colleagues over at TAP, because you're right. They mean well, they want to do well, and they really do care. But again, they have a clearly defined, specific role and task, and their role and their task is to provide you with the information relative to your benefits. Pretty straightforward. Pretty straightforward. But it's, I look at, but it's not designed to change your behavior. And that's the operative piece right there, which is really the Achilles heel for a lot of us, because we got to change from what we were learned and taught to do to what we need to start doing in terms of being in command and control of our life, the whole 9 yards. And for that, we need a behavior modification, not just a resiliency class, but we need a behavior modification process. And that's how we design Reboot in the full 3-week model. So when people go through the full 3 weeks, the design is really to change behavior. And we've been successful at doing that over time. And why 3 weeks? Because it takes 21 days to change your behavior. And so again, that's the science behind it. But once you begin the process and the person understands how to do it and they begin to internalize it, then they can be successful. And so we stay with our graduates for life. And we still have conversations with the graduates of our first workshop. And we ask them, are you still using the tools and the methodologies that you learned in the workshop? And there is an unequivocal, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, it was a game changer. It was a total life changer in terms of you change the way you think, you change the way every other outcome in your life, you change that outcome.
Exactly. It's 1% at a time. You can't just jump into things, right? For example, like if you want to run a marathon, you gotta start a little bit at a time. Because if you try to just jump right back into it, you're gonna injure yourself. So a little bit at a time, and it's just like everything else. Like at boot camp, they weren't telling you how to fix aircraft during boot camp. They're telling you how to be. They're telling you how to be a sailor.
The basics.
Yeah.
You just learn the basics, you know how to do the certain things, how to dress and all that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty sure both of you, as well as maybe some of the listeners, have all tried to go in the gym and build muscle. And have you ever noticed that when you're trying to build muscle, you could be in the gym for like 2 or 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and might not necessarily see results. And folks, get frustrated. That's why, when you have like New Year's resolutions and folks say, oh, I'm going to go on a diet, I'm going to start losing weight, I'm going to get in there and exercise and all that. And they get in there and exercise, and they do it straight for like 30 to 45 days, but they don't see nothing. They may feel a little bit, I feel good, but I don't feel anything. Well, that's because it takes time to change the DNA structure, to build the muscle fiber. It takes time. I mean, and this is pretty much very scientific, where it says over a period of time, the cells have to, sort of like be regenerated, the whole 9 yards. And that's why when you really go into changing your physical appearance through exercise, you're talking about a commitment of about maybe 6 months to a year to really see the results versus an overnight flash. And so what most people don't realize is there's this factor built in called time that requires you to go through this learning process so that it could be solidified in your thought, in your subconsciousness. And so what we teach everybody is that you got to, and that's why we tell them, look, start early. Don't wait until you're on the threshold of getting out. You're in a crisis mode. You got 30 days left to go. And now you're trying to go in and build all this up and put all that stuff together. Because honestly, it's not going to happen. Because it takes time. You really got to plan it. And so the usual planning process over time for it to be successful is at least start a year, preferably 2 years before getting out, and begin changing some of the basic habits. Because again, when you leave the military, it's a little bit more than just changing the uniform. It's also changing behavior. That's the game. That's the inside game, which is, no, you can't change. You can change uniform. Everybody can do that, but that's not what you're trying to do. You're trying to change behaviors, and it took a while for all of us to become who we are, and it's going to take a while for us to become that other person. And so start early, and then you do little baby steps. Don't try to, I'm going to do a radical rebuild, because it ain't going to work. You can't focus that much energy on that, but just little things, little tweaks of behavior over time can get a person into the long run. In fact, there's an old African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. Okay.
Yes.
Take the time, do it together. It's a slow process. Change it. Don't do that quick thing, because quick fixes just don't last. So
Absolutely.
Good stuff there. I think we're coming up on about an hour, if you will. Yes, about an hour. Any more you want to cover? Yeah.
Wow, that felt like 10 minutes.
Yeah, I know. Time flies when you're having fun.
Exactly. Well, we know you still haven't made dinner, and your family's probably gonna kick you out if you don't make dinner. And my wife, it smells delicious, so she's probably already made dinner. Mm-hmm. Chris, I'm sorry.
No, you guys enjoy your families, because the time away from mine makes me appreciate mine even more. Mm-hmm. But hey, back to what we're doing here. This is important work, and Maurice, you are more than just a trailblazer. You are literally laying down foundations for generational change, and not just generational change, but generational wealth of knowledge, wealth of experiences. You are you're definitely somebody that I'm glad that's in our corner.
Well, hey, thank you. I like to think of it as leaving a legacy. We should all leave some kind of a legacy. How they say, let's leave the world a better place than it was when we came in. and let's use our talents, that God gave us to make life better for all mankind. And so I found my, how they say, my fit. What am I? What's my DNA? What am I designed to do? And then once you identify what you are designed to do, then zero in on it like a laser, focus your energy, and then be the best at it, and then just let inertia take its place. And so, I tell people that, the things that I'm doing are just basic, if you will. And it really is. It's like, just easy stuff here. But it seems to be making a difference in the lives of everyone else. And so sometimes just being yourself in the right spirit is what we all need. And so I'm just glad to be able to do this. I'm glad that, Chris, that you walked through the door that day. It's like I never knew what was going to happen. From day to day, time to time, and you never know who the souls are that come into your life that changes things. And so it's sort of like my force was combined with your force, and then you brought Yogi in, and then his force started to build, and then on and on and on and on. And so imagine if we keep doing this and we keep bringing everybody in. Imagine getting the Chiefs mess on board with this and bringing all of their power and their energy to the table as a force multiplier. This thing would be absolutely unstoppable if we can get the Chiefs mess to really focus their energy on what we're doing here.
And a lot of this is forward looking, so that's what we're kind of, whenever I talk to other chiefs and other leaders, I'm like, hey, think about it like this: forward looking. You want your sailors to be forward looking because you want them to be able to eventually replace you, and you have to be forward looking to do the job that you do as a chief, as a leader. You have to be able to forward think. So that involves exit strategy. So if your sailors are not involved in their exit strategy, then they're probably not involved in the stuff that they're doing every day. So that's exactly right. If we could get the Chiefs mess behind this, which guarantee you they are behind this, they just don't know what they don't know yet,
All right. They don't know, but it's coming.
Thing too.
Yeah, and you got an accurate representation of the Chiefs mess right here on this podcast.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, look, we'll be talking again tomorrow. We're getting close to Thursday. It looks like Thursday is going to turn out to be a great day. If we can get a few more folks in, that'll be powerful. We're going to have a great, what we call Employers Chat and Chew. We got some really great guests coming out. And so we're just in for a historic day on Thursday. And I'm getting, I try not to get overly excited about things, but I'm getting excited about that because that's a milestone here in San Diego. And again, it's something that's ultimately newsworthy that we might even try to, do a little coverage to let folks know what's happening. But let's keep making history. I mean, that's a history making moment. If we can get more people in, boy, that's a total game changer.
All right.
Absolutely. So, fam, it's a pleasure. We'll see you again. Go cook food.
Yeah.
Go eat food.
Same to you guys now. Have a good evening. Okay.
Hey, take care, Maurice.
You too now. All righty. Bye-bye.
Are you leaving me? You're leaving me, aren't you? You think it's funny. Do us a solid. Share this content with everyone you know, regardless if they're associated with the military or not. This content will help someone you know, and hopefully will lessen the deadly gap after service. Our goal is to do whatever we can to reduce the number of suicides from 22 to 0 within the community. Give us a 5-star review, follow, like, and subscribe. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, TikTok, and you can follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram for more content from our guests. These are our personal experiences, and we do not represent the views of the United States Navy and or the Department of Defense. Your transition is ultimately up to you. Please do your research and ask questions. Use Master Chief Google or ask a friend and network within the community that you belong to. Return to Roots out.